Tonight, Ukraine declaring a state of emergency as Russia positions itself for a full-scale invasion. The Pentagon warning nearly 80% of Russian troops near the border are in attack position and are, quote, ready to go at any moment. Ukraine calling up more reservists and urging all of its citizens to leave Russia immediately. The U.S. appearing to lose hope on diplomatic efforts, now announcing new sanctions targeting Russia's economy. Shelling intensifying in eastern Ukraine. Our Richard Engel caught in the middle. His report moments away. Supreme search. President Biden could announce his nominee for the Supreme Court as early as tomorrow. The president already interviewing at least 3 trailblazing candidates. So who's on the short list to fill the seat that will be vacated by Justice Breyer? Pete Williams joins Top Story. Also, the National Guard deployed to D.C. as a convoy of truckers protesting vaccine mandates heads to the nation's capital. The group inspired by demonstrators who took over downtown Ottawa. Could what happened in Canada happen here? TV host murdered. The body of a journalist found wrapped in a sheet on the side of a highway in Mexico. She's the 6th member of the media to be killed in the country just this year. The growing calls for the government to do something. Plus, the dramatic end of a hostage standoff in Amsterdam. The new video showing the suspect walking out of an Apple store while holding a gun to someone's head. Moments before he's hit by a police car. What we're learning about the suspect's bizarre demands and the heroic actions from those trapped inside. And the exclusive interview with the husband of the cinematographer killed on the set of Rust. Why he's placing blame directly on actor Alec Baldwin. Top Story starts right now. And good evening. The Pentagon says Putin is ready to go. We begin Top Story tonight with the latest on that ongoing crisis in Ukraine and the warning that Russia is ready for a full-scale invasion. Top U.S. officials say Russia is, quote, as ready as they can be, with nearly all its troops near the border in attack position and more soldiers on board landing ships positioned in the Black Sea. In Ukraine, new video appearing to show people lining up outside a military enlistment office in Kyiv as the country calls up more reservists. Another crippling cyber attack reported there, and Ukraine's parliament now declaring a nationwide state of emergency for 30 days that will start on Friday. President Biden announcing new sanctions on the company in charge of building an expanded pipeline from Russia to Germany and threatening to do more if Putin proceeds. The conflict is also intensifying in eastern Ukraine. Richard Engel is there and leads us off again tonight.
New satellite images tonight show within the last 36 hours, Russian equipment, including a field hospital close to Ukraine's border. A senior U.S. defense official warning Russia has nearly 100% of the forces it would need to launch a full-scale invasion. And now the White House declaring cyber attacks on Ukrainian government websites today are consistent with Russian actions in the past. But will President Putin move from sending forces into areas of Ukraine already controlled by Russia to a full-scale attack? Tonight, after weeks projecting calm, Ukraine's president drafting a state of emergency, allowing curfews, the seizure of property, and mobilizing private industry for war. President Zelensky said the future of Europe's security is being tested in Ukraine. And at the front line, Russian-backed separatists have already begun to prepare the battlefield.
Sometimes the rounds are closer than others. It's not a good sign when you can hear that whistle of an incoming round. Those are being fired. Those rounds are coming from the separatist areas and are landing inside Ukraine, coming right over this frontline position, coming right over this trench. This village has been hit hard over the last 4 or 5 days, and about half the people have moved out already. So it came from this direction. What do you think the separatists are driving at? Why are they firing onto these mostly empty villages?
Before a big attack, they escalate things to try to break a soldier's spirit and demoralize him, a commander said. Then, run, he says. Let's get out of here. We are on their firing line, he says.
That is what it is like to be in one of these frontline villages. And the shells were just coming in at random. When they're fired, you hear them go off, and then you have that few seconds when they're in the air and you don't know when they're going to land, where they're going to land, or where they're going to explode.
Russia and the separatists claim Ukraine is on the offensive and that Russia is acting in self-defense. it's a transparent lie.
Tom, there's clearly been a shift here, and Ukraine is now preparing for war at home. It has also told the roughly 3 million Ukrainians who live in Russia that they should leave the country immediately. Tom?
Okay, Richard Engel, up close right there in those trenches. Richard, thank you. And in Washington, President Biden announcing today more sanctions now on the company in charge of building Russia's Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline, reversing his 2021 decision to waive sanctions. This is the latest move from the White House as tensions overseas increase. Peter Alexander joins us now with more on that live from the White House tonight here on Top Story. So, Peter, I want to start by asking you about those new sanctions on the Nord Stream 2 natural gas pipeline. How does this move specifically impact Russia and send a message to Putin?
So, Tom, for the president, this is a significant step. As you noted, it sanctions the company in charge of building that oil pipeline between Russia and Germany, an $11 billion project, what the White House has said would be a cash cow for both Vladimir Putin and for Russia. The sanctions also hit the company's top corporate officers. As you noted, President Biden just last year, he had waived those sanctions. But yesterday, notably, Germany's chancellor announced that he was suspending approval of the pipeline. The U.S., the president, they were quick to tout that move as evidence that NATO allies were united against Putin's invasion. And today I asked the press secretary, Jen Psaki, if this pipeline could be revived in the future. She said it is not moving ahead right now, adding, quote, it's currently dead at the bottom of the sea, Tom.
All right, speaking of Jen Psaki there, she mentioned today that the White House is considering tapping into the U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserve. What does that mean for Americans?
Well, the president is trying to limit the pain that Americans are already feeling at the gas pump, Tom. He warned that the protecting freedom, frankly, comes with a cost. He acknowledges that Americans are likely to see the gas prices keep going up. But one solution that they are considering, Psaki said, is another release from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, the SPR, as they describe it. She said that option is on the table. Last fall, November to be exact, the president had ordered 50 million barrels of oil released to deal with surging gas prices. It helped a bit temporarily. There's still another 10 million or so, I'm told, that have not been released. But prices, as you see, Tom, are high right now, roughly $3.50 a gallon on average nationwide. And in California, drivers there are paying an all-time high $3.74 a gallon.
All right, Peter Alexander for us tonight. Peter, we appreciate that. With the Pentagon warning that Russia could act at any moment, we want to bring in now NBC News military analyst Colonel Jack Jacobs. He's a retired U.S. Army colonel and Medal of Honor recipient. Colonel, we thank you for joining us tonight here on Top Story. Let's start with the Pentagon's official assessment, right, that Russia is ready for a large-scale invasion. The officials said troop formations are close as 3 miles away, but also maybe as far away as 30 miles away. So they're right there. How do you see this latest warning fitting into the bigger picture of what kind of military action we might see from Russia?
Well, the likelihood is that if there's any incursion, a bigger incursion into Ukraine, it'll come in the east, the breakaway areas that are getting shelled at the moment. But we have to remember that Putin also has a large number of divisions located in Belarus, right on the border, and not far from Kyiv. He can do just about anything. He's got almost 200,000 troops, plus all the support required, something in the neighborhood of 15 to 17 divisions that could rapidly overwhelm all of Ukrainian forces very, very quickly, leaving Ukraine to fight a guerrilla war ultimately. He's probably not going to do that right away. The first test was the first incursion into the breakaway areas, mostly to see what we were going to do. And what we did is exactly what he thought we would do. What we didn't do is impose the strictest of sanctions on Russia, and that is to remove them from the SWIFT system, the international payment system, which would dry up all cash flows into and out of Russia. Still, his perception is that we're not going to do it. We're unlikely to do it because it would cause great economic harm, not just to Russia, but also to Western Europe and trade generally. But he's ready to proceed, and he is going to step little by little to see how far he can get before the United States imposes even greater sanctions.
Colonel,
but they can wrap.
Yeah, Colonel, not to interrupt you, but I hear your take on this. At this point, do you think Putin even needs a false flag operation to even happen? Because it seems like the entire world has accepted that he's going to invade Ukraine. He's already there in the eastern provinces. On top of that, the Pentagon is telling everyone that he's about to invade. So I'm just wondering at this point if this false flag scenario is even necessary, if Putin knows, in essence, it's whenever he wants to go.
Well, it's not necessary, but he'll do it anyway. Don't forget, he's got a constituency inside Russia. If he does invade in large scale, we're going to impose really difficult sanctions on him, and it's going to affect his constituency inside Russia. Now, the people who are closest to him, they've hoarded plenty of gold, billions of dollars worth of stuff. It's not going to affect them very greatly, but it is going to affect the average Russian. And it's important to him and for him to continue this fiction that he's going in to save Russians from Ukrainian aggression. Tom?
Colonel, Pentagon Press Secretary John Kirby essentially said the U.S. is rebasing those troops in Eastern Europe, but not sending more U.S.-based troops to NATO allies just yet. Do you agree with that approach, or do you think that we should be sending troops now in anticipation of a larger-scale invasion? Again, if Putin, we have to remind our viewers this, if Putin takes over Ukraine, he's essentially right on the border of all those NATO nations.
Yeah, we're not going to fight in Ukraine. We're sending troops not to fight, but to bolster up our relationship with Eastern European countries where we do have troops already and who are terribly concerned, particularly in Northern Europe, in the Baltic states, and in Eastern Europe, in Poland, terribly concerned about whether or not we're going to make a stand against Russian aggression. If we don't send troops, if it looks like we're not going to bolster up our allies, they're going to be very much more concerned than they are now, and it may generate the kind of further action and aggression by Russia we don't want to see. So we're not going to fight, but it's important to keep our allies close, Tom.
Colonel, you saw combat up close in Vietnam. This obviously is a much different war, a different time, but I want to ask you, what is your sense of the Ukrainian people right now? There is no sense of panic. We are not seeing a mass exodus to the western provinces just yet. That has not been reported. Actually, a lot of the reporting is that the trains to the west are largely empty, right? My question to you is, do you think we'll see what happened in Afghanistan? Do you think the Ukrainians will just give up, or do you think they will fight to the death, unfortunately?
Well, it's a very interesting question. I think Putin's objective here is to wear down his enemies. He thinks that after a while, the Ukrainians will just get tired of it all, and that the West will get tired of it all, that the Western allies will get tired of it. Dried up the pipeline, that can only go so far. His perception is that Germany and Italy, who get a great deal of their natural gas from Russia, they're going to scream after a while, and they'll go soft, that the American public will go soft, and that ultimately he'll be able to have his way without having to do the necessity of a large-scale invasion. Nevertheless, he's still prepared to do it. But his perception is that the West is soft, that we're not interested in engaging in Ukraine, even if it means the defense of Western Europe, and he can wait us out. And he may be right, Tom.
All right, Colonel Jack Jacobs tonight for us. Colonel, we always appreciate your analysis. Thank you. Back here at home in the States, we're following a developing story. A convoy led by truckers is setting a course from Southern California to Washington, D.C. The so-called People's Convoy will make the drive to protest COVID-related mandates. The Pentagon now deploying the National Guard and officials in our nation's capital making security preps. NBC's Capitol Hill correspondent Garrett Hake has those details.
Tonight, a convoy led by at least a dozen truckers setting off from Southern California on a 2,500-mile mission to protest COVID-related mandates in Washington, D.C.
We, the people, want our country back. We do not want to be under a dictatorship.
The so-called People's Convoy is one of several loosely organized groups expected to converge on the D.C. region over the next week and a half, inspired by recent demonstrations that shut down Canada's capital city and border crossings, cheered on by some congressional Republicans.
I would absolutely welcome a similar pronouncement of protest in our nation's capital by truckers and anyone who wants their freedoms back.
Local and state police agencies say they're prepared to deal with protests that could create massive traffic backups on the Capitol Beltway or attempts to blockade downtown D.C. The Pentagon on Tuesday authorizing up to 700 unarmed National Guardsmen and 50 vehicles to help with traffic control. And Capitol Police considering reinstalling a perimeter fence around the Capitol, at least through next Tuesday's State of the Union.
Are you confident in the security of the Capitol ahead of the State of the Union this year?
Well, again, this is in the realm of the police. They have a good handle on what the expectation is. Some of it won't even come until after the State of the Union, but no, I feel confident.
All right, Garrett joins us now from outside the Capitol. Garrett, we can see some of the security preps there just behind you. You know, you said at least a dozen truckers. Do Capitol Police think those numbers will grow?
They're preparing for that possibility, and that's really the big challenge with this whole story, Tom. The truckers have been announcing that they might have tens, dozens, hundreds of people joining their convoys, but we've not seen those numbers show up yet. Capitol Police, though, aren't taking any chances. They're preparing for those numbers to possibly grow over the next week.
Yeah, and I want to ask you about that, about not taking any chances. We know the way they look at security obviously has changed a lot from January 6th. I know you've done a lot of reporting on this firsthand. What's your sense from speaking to these officers? Are they taking this seriously?
They are. They're really trying to focus on the intelligence. There are so many of these different convoys floating around on Facebook groups or Telegram channels, people talking about plans. The key element of this is going to be siphoning out who's actually coming, what are their intentions, which threats need to be paid attention to, and which can be simply ignored.
Garrett Haake for us tonight from Capitol Hill. We want to turn now to the forecast. We've been tracking the weather all week. A slow-moving, messy winter storm putting 50 million people nationwide under winter alerts. It's a wintry mix of snow and freezing rain blanketing the west, and some cities bracing for ice up to 3/4 of an inch thick. That's scary. And while the East Coast is seeing record temperatures, that storm system set to put an end to the warmer weather. Al Roker again joining Top Story tonight. Al, I mean, this weather has been all over the place, at least in the Northeast.
That's right. And it's just going to get wilder, Tom. As we take a look, you'll see right now on our radar satellite map, you can see that basically we're looking at some light snow in the mountains of Southern California, and we're also looking at an icy mix making its way through the mid-plains. Right now, 67 million people impacted by winter weather advisories, winter storm warnings, winter storm watches. Speaking of winter storm watches, we've got them here in the Northeast, and yet for tomorrow. But today, look at these record highs. Portland, Manchester, Boston, Worcester, Hartford, Newark, New York City, and Islip, all looking at record temperatures today. But here comes this storm system. Significant icing tonight in the southern plains. To the south of it, heavy rain from Tennessee on into Virginia. Tomorrow, that snow and ice is going to travel up from Iowa all the way into Maryland. There is a flood risk for more problems down in the Tennessee River Valley. Friday, heavy snow develops for much of New England, whereas the storm moves off the northeast coast by evening, but not before dumping a ton of rain in the Tennessee River Valley. Streams and rivers already running very high, so we're looking at another round of flooding. Here's what I'm really concerned about. This icing stretching from New York and New Jersey all the way across down into Little Rock, where some of it's very significant, and down into northern Texas. Tree damage, power outages, and roads are going to be a mess. And then the snow. About 2 to 4 inches around the Great Lakes, but as you get into the Northeast, 6 to 12 inches before it's all over Friday night for Boston. Bangor, 4 to 8. Albany, New York, 6 to 12. New York City right now, we're going to drop those numbers, maybe 1 to 3 inches, but western New York could see 4 to 8 inches of snow. We're going to be fine-tuning this, and we'll have more for you tomorrow. Tom?
All right, Al Roker again for us tonight. Al, thank you for that. Next to the start of the trial in the botched police raid that took Brianna Taylor's life, Brett Hankinson is the only officer to face charges in connection to that deadly incident. Taylor's family says the charges do not go far enough, and today a neighbor testifying the officer's actions on that night were, quote, reckless. Ron Allen has this report.
Tonight, former Louisville police officer Brett Hankinson is on trial for his actions in the raid that left Brianna Taylor dead. But the prosecution made it clear in her opening arguments that Hankinson is not on trial for Taylor's death.
This is not a case to decide who is responsible for the death of Brianna Taylor. Brianna Taylor should not have died that night.
Hankinson is facing 3 charges of wanton endangerment for firing shots into a neighboring apartment. His shots did not hit Taylor, but it's the only prosecution from the raid that killed her. For years, attorneys for the Taylor family have said this isn't enough.
The wanton endangerment charge, it just doesn't make sense when you think about they had wanton endangerment for the white neighbor's apartment, the bullets going there, but not for the bullets going into Brianna Taylor's body.
That white neighbor taking the stand today, telling the jury just how close those bullets were.
So this shot here, I believe, is the one that I was inches away from hitting me.
Defense attorney Stewart defending his client's actions, saying they were in a, quote, chaotic situation.
But he was firing in the direction of that as he was taught to do. You're taught to shoot until the threat is stopped.
That threat was part of a raid that took place in March of 2020. Police had a no-knock warrant and busted into Taylor's home seeking evidence in a narcotics investigation. Her boyfriend fired a shot, saying he believed it to be a home invasion. No drugs were found, but an unarmed Taylor was fatally shot by police. The case sparked national outrage in the summer of 2020 as the country grappled with race and policing. Taylor's family settled with the city of Louisville for $12 million. But then, the absence of criminal prosecution for any of the shots fired at Taylor has both members of the community and some legal experts saying true accountability is out of reach.
A prosecutor could come back and reevaluate Brianna Taylor's case, but they probably will not. This probably will be it. And again, this isn't justice for Brianna Taylor. This is justice for Brianna Taylor's neighbors.
All right, Ron Allen joins us live tonight. Ron, so many in that community very upset about this. A lot of controversy surrounding this case. Explain to our viewers what prosecutors are up against in this case.
Well, they're trying to prove that there was reckless endangerment in the way that Hankinson fired his weapon, that he fired it recklessly. But as you heard in this piece, the Taylor family, her supporters, are very angry that there is no charge against any officer in connection with firing shots at her and her boyfriend, the shots that killed her. And they don't see how this makes any sense. But this is the result of a grand jury process. The grand jury looked at the case, they looked at the allegations, and this is what they came back with. And there was a lot of controversy surrounding that. There's more fallout from this case. Hankinson and two other officers who were most involved have been fired or forced to resign. The city of Louisville and the state of Kentucky now have more restrictions and new laws governing no-knock warrants. And the federal government, the Department of Justice, has a top-to-bottom investigation of the Louisville Police Department underway, one of these so-called pattern and practice investigations, looking at everything that they do and whether or not it's discriminatory in any way as well. But most legal experts we talk to say that it's very unlikely that there will be any court proceeding, any sort of process where anyone is held directly accountable for killing Brianna Taylor. Tom?
All right, Ron Allen for us tonight. Ron, thank you. Tonight, a major decision for President Biden drawing closer who he will nominate for the Supreme Court. NBC News has learned that the president has interviewed 3 finalists for the lifetime appointment. Sources telling NBC they include 2 federal judges, Ketanji Brown Jackson and J. Michelle Childs, and California Supreme Court Justice Leandra Kruger. The president is expected to make his choice anytime between now and Monday. To get a closer look at these candidates, let's bring in NBC's justice correspondent Pete Williams. Pete, it seems likely that one of these 3 will replace Justice Breyer. We're going to have to wait and see exactly who gets selected. I want to start with the judge whose name was thrown out pretty early on in the process because she clerked for Justice Breyer.
Right, that's Ketanji Brown Jackson, the federal appeals court judge here in Washington. Of course, you have to get your nominee confirmed, and just 8 months ago, she got through the Senate confirmation process for that position with the votes of 3 Republicans. Before that, she was a federal trial judge here for 8 years, and she'd be the first justice since Thurgood Marshall, who retired 30 years ago, with significant experience defending accused criminals because she's a former public defense lawyer here in Washington. She was born here, but she grew up in Miami, where her father was a lawyer for the school board, which she says kindled her early interest in the law. And here's a fun fact. She is distantly related by marriage to the former Republican House Speaker Paul Ryan.
Oh, wow, that is a fun fact. I also want to ask you, speaking of Republicans, about the other federal judge on the list, J. Michelle Childs. And I mention Republicans because she's somebody whose name drew bipartisan support if you consider Lindsey Graham and some of his praising words.
Because of where she lives. She's been a federal trial court judge in South Carolina for nearly 12 years. And her background is a departure from the usual Supreme Court nominee's profile of Ivy League schools and work at some white shoe law firm. She was born in Detroit. She grew up in South Carolina after her parents divorced, and her mother decided to move there to escape city crime. Her father died of a gunshot wound when she was 14. She went to state school. She became one of the first black women to make major partner in a South Carolina law firm. And then she worked for the state labor department and the state workman's comp office and became a state court judge before she was nominated for the federal bench and confirmed by the Senate on a voice vote.
Yeah, a compelling life story, no doubt that will likely help her in this process. And lastly, we have Leandra Kruger, who is the youngest of the candidates on this list. How important is that, obviously, when choosing a justice, and what else do we know about her?
Well, age certainly counts, and more so in recent years because Supreme Court nominees have tended to be younger because they can stay longer once they're confirmed. She is 45. She would be the youngest on the current court. Amy Coney Barrett, who is next oldest, just turned 50. Her birthday was last month. Justice Kruger has been on the California Supreme Court for 7 years. She would be the first person nominated directly from a state court since Sandra Day O'Connor was appointed 40 years ago. And she knows her way around those marble halls because during 7 years as a Justice Department lawyer, she argued 12 cases before the Supreme Court. She's also a former Supreme Court law clerk for Justice John Paul Stevens, Tom.
All right, Pete Williams for us, who I know will be on standby until that announcement is made. Pete, thank you. Now to an NBC News exclusive. Our Hoda Kotb sitting down with the widow of Rust cinematographer Halyna Hutchins. In his first sit-down interview, Matthew Hutchins shared his heartbreak and his anger over the death of his wife and who he thinks should be held accountable. NBC's Miguel Almaguer has more on that interview.
The idea that the person holding the gun, causing it to discharge, is not responsible is absurd to me.
In his first interview, a Today Show exclusive, Matthew Hutchins, husband of cinematographer Halyna Hutchins, says Alec Baldwin, who fired the fatal shot that killed his wife, is in fact to blame for the movie set shooting.
Gun safety was not the only problem on that set. There were a number of industry standards that were not practiced, and there's multiple responsible parties.
In the extensive interview with Hoda Kotb, Hutchins, who's filed a civil suit against Baldwin and others on the production of Rust, says he watched Baldwin's interview in terror as he recounted in detail Halyna's death and deflected blame.
I feel that someone is responsible for what happened, and I can't say who that is, but I know it's not me.
Watching him, I just felt so angry. Just so angry to see him talk about her death so publicly in such a detailed way, and then to not accept any responsibility after having just described killing her.
4 months after the shooting, Hutchins recalled telling his 9-year-old son his loving mother was never coming home. Hutchins also remembers embracing Baldwin amid a swirl of emotions when first arriving in Santa Fe, well before the actor spoke publicly.
He said, essentially, he felt grief but no guilt.
Almost sounds like he was the victim. And hearing him blame Halyna in the interview and shift responsibility to others and seeing him cry about it, I just feel like, are we really supposed to feel bad about you, Mr. Baldwin?
All right, Miguel joins us now from Los Angeles. Miguel, we just heard Matthew Hutchins say to Hoda in your piece there that the idea that the person holding the gun isn't responsible is absurd. Does he want Alec Baldwin to be criminally charged?
Well, Tom, Hoda asked Hutchins if he thinks Baldwin should be criminally charged. He didn't directly answer that question. Instead, he said he wants to see what the DA has to say, but that investigation may take several weeks, even months, until we have an answer on that question. Tom?
All right, Miguel Almaguer for us tonight, and you can see much more of Hoda Kotb's exclusive interview with Matthew Hutchins tomorrow on Today. All right, we want to turn overseas now to a story we first reported last night, a dramatic hostage standoff in Amsterdam. New video tonight emerging showing the final tense moments and details about the heroic moves from those trapped inside. Our Kelly Kobiea has this story.
Oh my God, oh my God. A terrifying scene inside Apple's flagship Amsterdam store. An armed man holding a hostage, waving his weapon. at one point holding it to the hostage's head. This video captured by Pascal Vandenoort from his apartment. Did you hear gunshots?
I heard gunshots, I heard helicopters. It was a whole lot of noise.
Police say the gunman stormed the busy store at Tuesday afternoon. He was wearing a vest similar to a bomb vest, the police spokesman says, and had a handgun and an automatic weapon. Dozens were able to flee the store, but 4 were trapped, hiding in a closet. For nearly 5 hours, a tense standoff.
There was police hiding behind walls, police helicopters hovering over the square all evening.
The gunman demanding $230 million in cryptocurrency. And late into the night, a bottle of water. As the water was delivered by a police robot, the hostage escaped, the gunman chasing him, and out of nowhere, a police car running him down. The suspect survived. Police say he's a 27-year-old from Amsterdam. The motive, robbery. And the real hero, they say, the 44-year-old hostage who saw a chance to run and went for it. A split-second decision that likely saved lives. Kelly Kobiella, NBC News.
All right, Kelly Kobiella with that wild video. Kelly, thank you. Still ahead tonight, the shocking arrest of a UFC champion, John Jones, seen on body cam footage, headbutting a police car and hurling racial slurs allegedly at police officers. What led to the tense altercation? Plus the Tesla lawsuit, a former manager alleging he was fired for reporting serious safety violations that could lead to a catastrophic explosion. And the moment 2 National Guard helicopters crashed near a busy ski resort in Utah. And it's one of several chopper crashes just this week. So what's going on? Stay with us. Top story just getting started on this Wednesday night. All right, back now with a string of helicopter crashes over the last week. 2 National Guard choppers going down near a ski resort. Hours later, a military helicopter crashing in Hawaii. And it comes after a weekend of similar and frightening scenes. Quad Venegas has more.
Just run out. It crashed. It crashed. Oh, no. No way, dude.
2 National Guard helicopters going down as skiers watched in disbelief.
That was its blade.
The accident happening Tuesday morning at the Snowbird Ski Resort in Utah.
The 2 helicopters are sitting there on fire, 4 people on each helicopter.
Military officials say it happened during a high-altitude mountain training exercise.
As they landed, there was the snow kicked up, and the aircraft probably lost sight of the ground. We can know that there was portions of the rotor blade that separated from the helicopter and struck the second helicopter.
The chief confirming everyone made it out okay, but on the same day, a helicopter contracted by the U.S. Navy crashing on a training mission in Hawaii.
Unfortunately, all 4 on board perished, and so there were no survivors.
The helicopter was attempting to drop an object it had retrieved from the water during missile testing. Tuesday's incidents just days after 2 other choppers went down over the weekend near popular beaches.
Dude, a helicopter just went down in Miami. Oh, my God.
In Miami Beach, a helicopter narrowly missing crowds of beachgoers on Saturday, with all 3 on board surviving.
The helicopter just came down like and then smacked and hit the water. I'm just glad nobody got hit by the helicopter or nothing.
Less than 24 hours later, a police helicopter slamming into the water in Southern California's Newport Beach.
People were screaming, the reactions you would imagine. Duck and cover was the first thing I heard. We honestly thought we were going to hit. We didn't know where it was going to land, whether it was a house or the boat.
Civilians and first responders joining forces to rescue one of the officers inside. But Nicholas Vela, a 14-year veteran of the Huntington Beach Force, died in the crash. Despite the recent incidents, data shows fatal helicopter accident rates are actually lower than those across general aviation, according to the U.S. Helicopter Safety Team.
Overall, the trend in the last 10 years, as I think the accident rate's gone down by almost 50%, the fatal accident rate in the U.S., and we see the same thing in Europe. So as we see safety improve in business aviation and in the airline industry, we're also seeing it improve in the helicopter industry.
Banks says 4 accidents this close together would be considered an anomaly. It is now up to authorities investigating the crashes to find the causes.
Guad Venegas joins us now live from Los Angeles. Guad, clearly some of these crashes were fatal. But what are these pilots trained to do? Because it's sort of incredible that more people were not harmed, especially when you talk about that incident in Miami Beach and on the ski resort.
Tom, the pilot we spoke to said that when it comes to emergency or forced landings, the intention is to find an area with minimal obstruction. That's why pilots often head to fields, beaches, or highways without traffic. Yet there are still a lot of unanswered questions or factors to consider, like how much control did the pilots have over the aircrafts as they crash, when, as you mentioned, they were fortunate to stay clear of all of the civilians. Tom?
All right, Guad, thank you for that. When we come back, the plant explosion, a massive fire destroying a potato chip factory in Oregon. But take a look at these pictures. What officials say caused the blast, and the search for the driver accused of killing a woman over a parking spot dispute. The new surveillance video just released what it shows. Stay with us. All right, it is 7:40. We are back now with Top Stories news feed. We begin with the search for a driver after a deadly parking spot dispute in Florida. New surveillance video shows the dark-colored Toyota Corolla seconds before it hit and killed 57-year-old Olga Fernandez. Earlier this month, police say she was arguing with the man inside over a parking spot at an apartment complex near Miami when he intentionally drove into her. Also, new video shows the dramatic arrest of former UFC light heavyweight champion John Jones. Body cam footage obtained by Top Story shows Jones using alleged racial slurs towards officers during an arrest in Las Vegas in September. He then headbutts a police SUV. Jones was in Vegas for his Hall of Fame enshrinement when a security guard called police after noticing his girlfriend had a bloody lip. A boiler explosion is believed to be the cause of a massive fire at a potato chip factory in eastern Oregon. Check this out. New drone footage shows the blaze ripping through the plant on Tuesday. At least 6 people were injured there. Nearby roads and a train line were even shut down. Officials say the factory and everything inside was destroyed. No word yet, though, on what caused that boiler to bust. And a former Tesla employee is suing the company over allegations of racism and widespread safety violations. The former Tesla construction manager says he was fired for reporting violations at the company's battery factory in Nevada that could lead to catastrophic explosions and serious injuries. He also alleges he was the subject of racist slurs and graffiti from other employees. The company has faced multiple allegations of racism at its factories. All right now we want to continue our coverage of Russia tonight. President Putin insisting he has not sent any troops yet into those pro-Russian enclaves inside Ukraine. But late tonight, the Kremlin says separatist leaders there are asking for Russia military help. Keir Simmons is in Moscow.
In the rain, President Putin paying respects at the tomb of the unknown soldier, with Europe on the brink of a new, potentially deadly conflict. Saying he's open to direct and honest dialogue, though in an ominous sign, pulling Russian diplomats out of Ukraine.
I think that psychologically, President is ready to use military force if it would be needed.
We spoke to former Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Andrei Fedorov, who has close ties to the presidential administration. For years, President Putin has been attempting to build an economic fortress. He's already weathered sanctions similar to the ones he now faces from the US and its allies. Can sanctions change President Putin's mind?
If there will be very tough sanctions, but this level of sanctions which have been adopted yesterday and today, they're not influential enough.
And tonight, with the US having cancelled a meeting between Secretary Blinken and his Russian counterpart, diplomacy may be slipping away.
It's only Biden with whom he can speak, and I think must speak in this situation. When there is a breakdown of diplomatic relations, in some cases it's the last step to the war.
Keir joins us now from Moscow again tonight here on Top Story. Keir, you're somebody who has sat down with Vladimir Putin. You spoke also with people who are an expert in his thinking, if that can even exist. It seems like you can't predict his moves, at least not lately. What's the latest on the diplomatic front, and what do world leaders think right now when it comes to Putin's thinking and what his next move is?
Well, a number of diplomatic moves, Tom, that certainly many inside the Kremlin were hoping for that we now know aren't going to happen. That meeting between Secretary Blinken and his counterpart here in Russia, the hoped-for conversation, possibly even meeting between President Biden and President Putin, those aren't happening. The French, too, for example, calling off a possible meeting with the foreign minister here in Moscow. And those who had hoped for some kind of a diplomatic exit, or at least a diplomatic pause, very disappointed here in Moscow tonight. One other talking point here in Moscow, though, Tom, there was an extraordinary moment earlier this week where President Putin seemed to admonish the leader of his intelligence, his foreign intelligence unit, his foreign intelligence agency. It was shown on television, and people are questioning whether President Putin might be angry at some of the advice he has been given. One person close to the Kremlin telling me that President Putin and the people around him thought that the Ukrainian government would capitulate quickly under so much pressure. That hasn't happened. Has President Putin and his team miscalculated, Tom?
Keir Simmons again for Top Story from Moscow tonight. Keir, thank you. Now to Top Story's global watch in the deadly helicopter crash in Venezuela. Cell phone video shows the burning wreckage after the military helicopter went down in Lara. 2 military personnel were killed, but locals helped rescue both pilots on board. They are now in critical condition. The country's president has ordered an investigation into that cause. All right, and a mid-air scare for Sir Elton John, the singer's private jet, forced to make an emergency landing in Southern Ireland after it suffered a hydraulic failure at 10,000 feet. High winds then forced the plane to abort landing twice, but it eventually made it down safely. Elton was traveling from the UK to New York and performs at Madison Square Garden just hours later. All right, coming up, the TV host murdered. Another member of the media found dead in Mexico. What the country's president is saying about the rash of journalist killings. We'll be right back. All right, back now with the Americas, where we take a look at stories coming out of the U.S. and across Latin America. Tonight, a television host and model found dead in Mexico City. Michelle Perez Tadeo is now the 6th media worker killed in Mexico this year alone. The call is now growing for the Mexican government to do something. Priscilla Thompson has those details.
Tonight, another journalist in Mexico dead.
Fue encontrado el cuerpo de Anaí Michelle Pérez Tadeo.
29-year-old TV host and model Michelle Perez Tadeo was found dead on Tuesday, just south of Mexico City, officials say, days after friends and relatives reported her missing. Her body wrapped in a sheet, according to the Attorney General's office of Mexico City, discovered by firefighters while fighting a highway blaze. Authorities did not give a cause of death, but say they are investigating with a focus on femicides and gender crimes. A spokesman for the prosecutor's office promising, quote, justice towards women.
Esta fiscalía reitera que una de sus prioridades es atender a las víctimas con perspectiva de género, así como garantizar una nueva manera para investigar los delitos con especial énfasis en la justicia hacia las mujeres.
The murders of women because of their gender continues to rise in Mexico. Amnesty International finding 10 women and girls were murdered every day in Mexico in 2020. Others concerned about the growing trend of violence against people in her profession. Perez Tadeo is the 6th media worker killed in Mexico this year. 4 journalists were killed in January and a 5th earlier this month. In recent weeks, demonstrators have swept the country, journalists demanding action.
Trabajamos bajo la sombra de ser atacados y asesinados por nuestro trabajo y los crímenes que se cometen en nuestra contra no se aclaren.
A new report finding Mexico among the deadliest countries in the world for media workers. Now, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken speaking out on Twitter Tuesday, writing the high number of journalists killed in Mexico this year and the ongoing threats they face are concerning, calling for more accountability and protections for Mexican journalists, adding, my heart goes out to the loved ones of those who gave their lives for the truth. Mexico's president today calling Blinken's statement untrue, saying the Mexican government is doing enough to address the issue.
Lo que él está sosteniendo no es cierto. Es muy lamentable que haya asesinatos de periodistas. En todos los casos se está actuando, no hay impunidad.
Little consolation for family and friends of those like Perez Tadeo, still searching for answers.
All right, Priscilla joins us now live in studio. We still don't know the motive for Michelle Tadero's murder so far, but I do want to talk to you about Mexico's president because it's odd. At times he says he's addressing these killings, but he's also had somewhat of a contentious relationship with the press.
Yeah, Tom. Last year, he actually began hosting these press conferences where he would call out what he deems lies in the media, at times even singling out specific journalists. Now, none of that behavior has been tied to any of these murders, but groups and organizations are condemning it, calling on the president to tap down on some of that language as the number of journalists murdered continues to rise. And of course, meantime, journalists are also calling on the president to offer more accountability in those deaths.
Yeah, maybe pick the timing on some of those criticisms to the press. Priscilla, thank you so much for that one. When we come back, the undercover kindness. The social media star gifting strangers with hundreds, sometimes thousands of dollars in cash. The small test they have to pass before he dishes out the generous surprise. Stay with us. All right, finally tonight, the social media star making waves online for making life-changing donations to complete strangers. What he asked people to do before handing them hundreds, even thousands of dollars in cash, and the plans he has for a church complete, get this, with a water slide.
Find a veteran and give them $1,000 to help their Christmas dreams come true? You're a veteran.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much for serving.
Thank you.
His videos are unlike anything on social media.
What do you want most for Christmas this year?
Yeah, impossible.
Really, what?
My wife just passed away.
Can I give you a Christmas gift? What's your name? I'm Jimmy.
I'm Gilbert.
$500. That's for you, sir. Yes.
Transforming people's lives with a handful of cash and a whole lot of kindness. But there's a catch.
Seeing if someone could buy this ham and I could like work for them for it or something. No.
To receive a blessing, you first have to give one.
I actually came to the store today to see who would be the kindest person to help me out with Thanksgiving dinner. Oh. And so I actually don't need it. I have a gift for you.
No, you
Yes,
keep it.
I have a gift for you, ma'am.
No.
I got $500 for you.
Don't give me $500.
Yes, it's for you. You're amazing. This is for you to have.
Are you serious?
Yes.
You're nuts.
And you were the first lady.
It helps. That's for sure. It helps me do it. Thank you.
His name is Jimmy Kellogg, but online he's known as Jimmy Darts, always aiming for your heart. A man on a mission to spread a little love with what he calls undercover kindness.
Find a mom with kids and pay for their groceries? Excuse me, ma'am. I got a random question. I'm just seeing if someone could buy me these muffins. Every morning I wake up and I put a live stream on and 500 or 1,000 people hop on and literally the money just comes in like crazy. I'll hit $1,000 or 500 in like 10 minutes.
And that's when the fun begins.
Find a mom with kids and ask her to buy you a notebook, and if she does, give her $1,000.
His videos have gained a loyal following, more than 5 million fans on TikTok alone. So all of your videos kind of have the same formula. It starts with moral test. You know, you ask people to be kind.
You think you could buy me this cereal? I left my wallet at home. It's kind of awkward. I think it's like $3.
Why did you decide to do it that way?
I think it's just a great way to find people that like are prime for a blessing, you know. Offer, there's $100 just for your kindness, bro. Yeah, man. I appreciate you, bro. Yeah. The first video I did helping someone was I was actually in Miami walking on the beach, and there was this homeless gentleman living on a tent there. And I said, "You want to be best friends for the day?"
What happened next was a day full of fun and the beginning of an opportunity for two new friends.
Your boy Jimmy walked up on me and blessed me with an opportunity of a lifetime.
So I put his Cash App at the end of the video, and in 24 hours, like over $30,000 was sent to him. It just changed his life. So I was like, wow, there's a strong community of people out there that want to help, and if you just give them the opportunity, they will.
Since that video, Jimmy says he has gifted more than $100,000. Donations ranging from a few $100 to brand new cars. You completely transparent with where all the money goes?
Yeah, so basically all the donations, that's the cool thing. They send the money and that day they get to see who it went to, you know?
The 26-year-old says all the brand partnerships now pay the bills, which allows him to continue blessing strangers in what he says is the beginning of a bigger calling.
My dream is to start a church in Los Angeles, and it's called House Party Church. No drugs, no alcohol, but you come, there's a DJ, water slide for baptisms, and we're basically giving away cars.
Water slides for baptisms?
Yeah.
What do you say to people who are like, this kid's completely nuts?
Oh, I say, well, you're probably right. I don't got nothing to say to that, really. I just like having fun.
Until then, he's hoping his message online can help ignite a trend of giving.
Pays off to be generous, doesn't it?
It does. Be nice and be kind and love one another. Love will conquer all, always.
We're making generosity cool in a sense, because you can never go broke by giving. I would just say that to anyone watching. You can't go broke by giving. Love someone, and you'll be amazed at what happens.
You can't go broke by giving. Some good advice right there. We look forward to hearing more from Jimmy Darts. In the meantime, check him out on Instagram and TikTok if you're curious. Thanks so much for watching Top Story tonight. I'm Tom Llamas in New York. Stay right there. More news now on the way.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.